Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back to Techweek TV, brought to you by Callaghan Innovation. My name is Jake Miller. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Unfiltered, and this is the second last session we're presenting for the week after 60 odd sessions. So to the viewers from around the country who have been tuning in, thank you guys so much. We've hugely appreciated the interaction, the questions, the passion, the social media activity, and it's been such an honor to travel around and meet so many phenomenal entrepreneurs, business leaders, functional heads, from all around the country. And this session today is one I've been really excited about. It's innovation that's good for the world and Auckland Showcase. And I'm joined by Jeanette from Take My Hands. Jeanette, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Michael from McMullen and Wing. So thank you so much,
Definitely.
Michael. Yeah, so to kick this off, Jeanette's going to take us through a presentation and explain a little bit more about her business, her social enterprise, and then from there into Michael, and then we'll go into some questions.
Awesome.
Over to you.
Okay, cool. So I'm from Take My Hands. We're a social enterprise that collects usable medical equipment that will no longer be used in New Zealand and then works with health providers in the Asia Pacific region and gets that equipment to them. We started off with prosthetics, and in the last sort of 5 or 6 years sort of expanded over into general medical equipment. To get it there, why we're doing it, number of reasons. Minimising waste in New Zealand, which is really important, but also really touched by the stories of massive need in the Pacific and in Asia. So right from amputees that aren't able to access a limb and therefore aren't able to live a normal life, through to mums and babies having to sleep on floors in hospital corridors because of a lack of beds, or people dying simply because of a lack of a defibrillator, get my mouth around that one, or oxygen flow meter. So that's essentially why we do it. We can see that there's a massive resource here. The equipment that we're sending is all usable, and it's because we're upgrading in our health system, which makes sense. We have really high standards here. But it doesn't mean that that equipment that we're replacing is not really valuable and usable. So we've sort of tapped into that, and then working with health providers in the Pacific and Asia region, because they've got that expertise around medical, but also culturally what's appropriate. And then how we do it, essentially we're the facilitator. So it's all about connecting, and with the getting it from A to B, as much as possible we tap into spare capacity that exists in the transport and logistics chain. So for example, just this week actually, we've connected with the Pacific Forum line and able to utilise spare space that they have in their warehouse, space that they have outside, hours that they have with staff who can help us get containers loaded, and then space on trucks and space in ships. So minimising waste within the transport and logistics chain, and then working with the health providers over there who collect it off the wharf. So yeah, that's essentially how we do it. And we started with equipment, but starting to move into that facilitation of knowledge as well, and time and space. So yeah, that's kind of what we do.
It's amazing. It's very cool, and obviously such a powerful social mission. Like, how do you bring that to life internally at your company to make sure your team really feel like they're working towards that greater purpose and everything we're trying to achieve?
I mean, a lot of it's about sharing the stories and telling the stories of impact. So we capture data on everything. We know exactly what was sent and where it's ended up. We get stories back from the people that have received the equipment and how they've used it and the impact it really makes on them. And that essentially drives the motivation of what we're doing. And I mean, minimising waste in New Zealand is really important, and we are doing that to a degree, but actually it's those human stories that really make a difference.
And what one of those stories has personally resonated the most with you, the one that sort of reminds you every day why I'm doing this?
Well, there was the story, there's two.
Yeah.
Both of them about amputees actually. So one of them was a story that kind of kicked it all off, and that was about a young boy who was into cricket. Just, I've got boys, I know they're all into sports, and he was playing cricket in his village and hit the six. But the rule was, if you hit a six, you've got to go and get the ball yourself. So as he crossed the field to get the ball, he stood on a landmine, and that took his leg. And essentially that took away his ability to go to school, his sort of future of being able to raise a family, support a family, and all of those sorts of things. So in the first shipment that we did, it sort of started back in 2010 with prosthetics, and some of the equipment that we sent was used to create a leg for a boy just like Aman. And what we worked out, and this kind of leads into the stories and the kind of data behind it, is that when we kind of worked out how much it cost to get that leg there, for us it was 30 cents.
Right.
But actually the impact that it had on his life was like in the thousands.
Yeah.
So
That's
those sorts of
unbelievable,
stories are nuts.
And what was that? What was the kind of, entrepreneurs often talk about, they have this, almost light bulb moment, or where they just, the point where they make a decision to do something about a problem they identify. At what point was that for you? I'm sure you'd thought about this for a while, but at what point did you decide, I'm going to do something about this?
Well, essentially the decision had to be made because in 2012, essentially, because up until then it was a side project. The stuff came to my garage. I looked really dodgy because I had all these feet and legs kind of spilling out of my garage. There was no room for the car. And I was getting increasing interest both from health providers but also from people with equipment.
Yeah.
So I had to make that decision. Either I need to can this and stop the rumours in the community, or do this properly. And that's when I set up. We're set up as a charitable trust, but operate as a social enterprise.
That's amazing, and I'd love to talk more about the structure of that and how you got to that soon. But for now, I'll pass on to Michael for his presentation.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, I'm from McMillan and Wing, and McMillan and Wing is a shipyard which you'll see in a moment a picture of us that's on the banks of the beautiful Tamaki River here in Auckland, and we've been there since 1967, so that's 52 years. And we've built everything from world travelling super yachts to America's Cup winning racing yachts, and a whole lot of commercial boats, fishing boats, ferries and so on. And I guess over the past few years we've been thinking a bit internally as a business about what the move away from fossil fuels towards electric propulsion and other things might mean for our business. And oddly, we weren't really feeling all that much push from the market at the time, and that wasn't giving us any real steer about where things were going to go. And it really sort of felt like if we weren't careful, we were going to still be doing in 50 years what we've been doing for the last 50 years, which, great as that might be, felt like missing the point. A lot of our oldest projects are sort of steel and aluminium boats. They're still out there working now, 50 years old. And in many ways, it doesn't look like the boats being built today really are very different from the boats from back then. So we looked at that and think, well, that's kind of interesting, kind of strange, particularly when you look at other industries at the kind of rate of change that we're seeing. It just didn't kind of level up. And at the same time, New Zealand is hosting the America's Cup in 2021, and we started saying, well, what's the opportunity for us as a commercial vessel shipyard with the America's Cup coming, and what might we be able to kind of get really happening because of the America's Cup? And this sort of dream kind of came together from all of that. And so I'm going to tell you briefly about what that dream is. So if we sort of cast our minds forward, just under 2 years, let's say it's 4 o'clock like it is now, it's a Friday afternoon, but it's in March 2021. And Emirates Team New Zealand is 6-0 up in the America's Cup. This is a really important part of our vision. So we're relying on you, Grant. The summer weather, though, it's delivered this glassy flat calm for a couple of days, and there's been no racing, and the tension's really high. And there's hundreds of journalists here from all over the world, and they're beaming these stories, and they need something to talk about. And so after 2 days without racing, they start talking about these amazing 75-foot flying machines, which were invented here in New Zealand. And they talk about what trickle-down might come from this into the rest of the marine industry and what sailors might be using in the future. And they also, they start to draw parallels with earlier campaigns and the trickle-downs that have come. And they talk about KZ7, plastic fantastic, the world's first fiberglass America's Cup yachts, New Zealand's very impressive and sort of groundbreaking entree into the America's Cup. And then they talk then about 1995, the Red Sox, the innovation and the leadership and the kind of culture around it, not just the amazing dominance of New Zealand in that event, but what that meant for New Zealand more broadly. And they talk about the careers and the businesses, world-leading businesses that were launched through those early campaigns. And then they start talking about a new innovation. And they start talking about this latest trickle-down story. And so today, on this Friday morning in March 2021, 100 international journalists gather on the steps of the very beautiful newly, in our case, new to be, but will then be the newly refurbished downtown ferry terminal. And 3 strikingly modern ferries glide into the ferry basin. They're silent, they're clean, they're low wash, they're proud Auckland branding, speaking to the service they provide, but also the story behind them. And they're fully electric. So these are lithium-ion battery boats charged at the dock while loading and unloading passengers. And these journalists who gather learn all about these, and this is sort of they learn about the businesses which brought them about, the collaboration, the engineers, and then kind of an extension of our dream, I guess, is we sort of thought, well, this is really, this actually could happen. We started looking into this, and then we said, well, 2021 is not just the America's Cup. So then we came back to the ferry basin, and we said, well, here we are in November in 2021, and it's Leaders Week at APEC, and we've got 30,000 delegates and journalists who have come down for this event, and here we are today on a sunny Friday morning, and the presidents of China and Mexico and Chile and Peru and Vietnam and Indonesia and Singapore and the United States and the prime ministers of Japan and Russia and Malaysia and Canada gather on the steps of the downtown ferry terminal. And on board one of New Zealand's now famous zero-emission silent low-wash ferries, our Prime Minister announces her government's support of Auckland Council changing all of Auckland's ferries to electric propulsion, thereby saving over 10 million litres of diesel a year and 30,000 tonnes of carbon. That's our dream, and that's exactly what we're doing. We hope. It's a multi-stage process, but we are deep in development of electric ferries right now, and we're really pleased to be partnering with some of New Zealand's kind of best and brightest. We're really grateful to Auckland's biggest ferry operator, Fuller's, who have made a contribution both practically and financially to our R&D program, which is very kind, and they do that because they have been trying for some time to find a way of electrifying their routes, and it's always looked really hard, and I think they believe that we might finally have cracked it. So we're really pleased about that. We're also really grateful that this week we can announce we've received some funding from Foundation North under their Gulf Innovation Fund Together program.
That's excellent.
And so that's a fund which has been brought together for the Hauraki Gulf and to restore the Māori, the health and well-being of the Gulf. And so they're really excited about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
Congratulations.
we've got a few more steps to get through, but...
and when do you expect the first one of these to be on the water?
Well, that deadline that we set ourselves at the very beginning of this, that kind of sparked the kind of momentum towards it, that deadline's still achievable.
Okay.
So end of next year.
Okay. And how many people do you have working on this right now?
Right now, I guess there's probably about 15.
Okay.
It'll be a lot more than that when we get into the really sharp end. But right now we're in the we're keeping it sort of loose. We've got a fairly good idea now of actually what the boat looks like, and how much battery it needs, and how fast it goes, how much energy it uses, what it takes to charge it up.
That's really exciting.
All that stuff.
Yeah, and we've spoken quite a lot this week, and even today in the last session I hosted about various skill shortages and so on, and whether the access to talent is here for some of the difficult problems Kiwis are trying to solve. How are you finding this? Obviously, solving quite a technically complex problem. Are there enough smart people in New Zealand to build these out? Yeah, it's been a pretty steep learning curve. We've after all these years of doing diesel-powered boats, our technical team's really stretched learning new things, but actually there's really, really good expertise we're finding. That's great.
And so at the high technical level, there's both really good expertise within New Zealand, and actually we're also finding particularly the Norwegians are really open to sharing the experiences they've had of electrifying different types of ferries.
Yeah.
What we're doing is a little bit unique down here, but it's also leaning quite hard on the successes that others have had. And
that's awesome.
So, we feel pretty confident about it.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, and Jeanette, what are you noticing to be the biggest trends in sort of medtech, and where the opportunities are today for valuable companies to be founded by smart entrepreneurs, whether it's technology related or more just in medicine and in health in general?
I can only talk about our experience.
Yes.
We're kind of working at the kind of other end of the tech side of it.
Yeah.
But in terms of where the greatest need is and the area that we're focusing on at the moment, it's actually biomed engineering.
Okay.
And from a Pacific perspective, that's a massive need.
Yes.
It's a lack of knowledge and expertise in how to maintain the equipment that they do have, which then limits their ability for healthcare. So we're actually working with Canterbury University and Fisher & Paykel Healthcare to pilot a program in the Solomon Islands where we have biomed students who are in the process of getting their degree or close to graduating, placed with our partners in the Solomon Islands to upskill, to work alongside the people over there, but also upskill them.
Okay.
And Fisher & Paykel obviously supporting that. And then working with some of the DHBs here to help support the biomed teams remotely.
Yes.
Using technology, so using video and images and email and Viber and all of those sorts of things. So we're just in the process of that. So I can talk about where the need exists there.
Yeah.
From a high-tech point of view, we so don't operate in that space.
Yes, no, it's good. It's fascinating insights though. And in terms of for both of you, one thing we haven't spent a lot of time talking about this week is business models and how to come up with the best models for different companies. And what you said is you originally set up as like a charitable trust and then sort of more into a social enterprise. And I'm curious to know how you reached that. And then I'm curious to know from Michael's perspective what the ultimate plan is. Is it to export these engines all around the world and what you're sort of thinking? So maybe starting with you, Michael, on your model and what you see the future of that being.
Yeah, well, we see if we can get a really good fleet of fast electric ferries running in Auckland, then we see that as a tremendous showpiece for a whole new green tech export industry around the world, and really it's a way of decarbonising the harbour cities of the world and their commuter transport systems. So we do see it as an export thing. Exactly what form that export might take, we're really open-minded about at the moment. As far as how much is done in market here, how much is done in market at the receiving end. A lot of this is an environmental drive. We're trying to, as well as do electric ferries, we're trying to bring circular economy principles into the development of the boat, and part of that is looking at how much stuff gets trucked around, shipped around. How do we minimise that, and how do we make sure that that the boats make sense, and how do they also not only enrich New Zealand and set New Zealand up as a leader, but how they also enrich the places that they go, and not only by being more efficient, but maybe there's a broader story to how we can take New Zealand expertise and technology and have that going around the world.
Awesome, great, and just finally, in terms of transportation more broadly, what other trends are you noticing? Where do you think the greatest opportunities are for disruption over the next few years?
Well, I think that the autonomy, I think, is coming hand in hand with the new energy. Although there's no particular reason for that, but I just think that through that process of thinking about how things could be different and looking beyond our normal boundaries, that's the standout. And everything we're doing in our electric ferries is quite different from how we've done other commercial boats in the past, as far as the control technology behind them, how they get the manoeuvrability, and that really does lead, even quite early on, not necessarily towards autonomy, but towards assisted docking, reducing damage from accidents and human error and all that kind of stuff.
And just quickly, will these boats drive themselves ultimately?
Well, ultimately they potentially could. That's I guess what I mean. But but that's I think there's still a huge role for the professional mariner in running a good operation. I mean, it's a hectic thing driving a fast ferry around in Auckland's harbour, and it's quite different from roads because although there's not as much traffic, there's no lanes, so you don't kind of know where everyone's going.
That's true.
It's a challenge we're not. We definitely see in our future, but we're not quite sure how to solve it yet.
Absolutely. And finally, Jeanette, can you just talk a little bit to your model and how you reached it? And
So we set up as a charity, mostly because partnership's really important to us, and we're partnering both with government organisations and with companies. And for them to be able to, for us to be able to utilise their spare capacity, it would be quite a different prospect if we were a company. But we operate as a social enterprise, so there is income driven through trade. It's obviously a fraction of the cost of the actual cost and value of the equipment that we're sending, but it means that our partners in the Pacific and stuff have some skin in the game, which is really important in terms of motivating action.
Exactly.
So Yeah, that model's worked for us. It's really interesting because I know there's a lot of work happening in the sector development of the social enterprise sector, and that business structure or how you structure your social enterprise is a big part of that. And we're involved in some of that review of structure, and I know that there are other social enterprises that have been really challenged by the limitations in business structure that you have for social enterprise.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I'm really passionate about social enterprise anyway, and businesses' role in creating social change, and that being not just through the output, but through all aspects of business. So, you know, whether it be looking at that circular economy, whether it be about how you employ and train and promote staff, diversity that exists within it, all of those sorts of things. So,
in a few words, what would you define a social enterprise as?
Social enterprise, I think, has my definition of it is a business that uses trade to generate revenue, but holds impact value as importantly as financial value.
Okay, that's a really nice way of putting it, actually. Yeah. Well, it's been a huge pleasure to talk to you both. You're both obviously working on super fascinating things, and very grateful for you both taking the time to come and share your insights with the viewers today and tell us more about your businesses. Jeanette, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you so much to the viewers for tuning in on Techweek TV. We have one session to go. I know Peter Beck is outside. We're about to kick off with the session with Rocket Lab, so stay with us. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks.